What's up, Rad fam? Welcome back to episode 4 of the Rad DAO podcast. Today, my guest is a great friend of mine. His name's Sam. No, not that Sam. This guy's got way more integrity, but most people in DeFi know him as Tears. Tears is a venture capital co-owner. He works in the DeFi space, and he's been involved with a number of projects. So we've actually had the pleasure to work together over the last year or so. Now, the interesting about this thing is that in spite of me actually trusting Tears and have known him for over a year, I've never seen his face until this morning, which goes to the heart of the conversation that we're going to have today, and it's around trust in crypto. How do you trust? Who do you trust? When do you trust? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Tears brings to us his newest venture, which is Veracity Audits, which goes to the heart of trust and bringing quality, actually meaningful audits to the crypto space, because I think there's a lot of fluff out there. But without further ado, I would like to welcome Sam, aka Tears, to the show. Welcome. Good to see you, my man.
Hello, Rad. Thank you very much for the intro. Very, very good. And yes, it's very good to see you as well. I know you were saying you've never seen my face, but here it is.
But I think that's the thing. Like, I have some great, what I would consider great friends in the space, and they genuinely don't know who I am. I don't know who they are. I might have seen a picture of them or something. But, like, how is it possible that a team of people can get together from the four corners of the globe, don't even necessarily know their first name, and manage to put together a project and make it a successful business? Like, isn't that nuts?
I think about it quite a lot, and there are so many layers to the question, but I think the general concept behind it is decentralized finance brings, it doesn't necessarily bring out the best in people. We've seen a lot of, you mentioned the other Sam, we've seen a lot of lack of integrity in the DeFi space, but in general, decentralized finance as a concept brings just very like-minded people together. And I know you do have mishaps here and there, but when these people put their aims together and do combine, you can make incredible things. And I think it just happens to harken back to that. We're all in for the same sort of goals. We love the tech. We potentially dislike what's going on with the governments across the world. We know that decentralized finance can get us away from that, and we're all in it together. So I feel like the longer you're here in this space, the more you realize that. So therefore, the more you're welcoming to other people, and you just go from there, right?
No, and I think you said it. Like, the trouble that I'm having right now is looking around the space at who's left, right? Because we've seen a lot of people exit crypto in the last probably 6 months as the market sort of died off. But I hate to see how many scams there are out there. It just drives me crazy. It's basically people have taken this and become their full-time job. They just write shit contracts or rug pulls or honeypots or whatever. And it's really frustrating, honestly, because if we're going to get that next leg of mass adoption, who's going to come into this space? And what are they going to find when they get here? So I don't know. I think we need a change, man.
We need change. We do need change, but we also need to, I think, it's one of those things. When you look back at that incredible film, what was it? Wolf of Wall Street, based on a true story, right? They was in penny stocks. So it's the same concept, just in a different realm of technology. So I don't feel like things are necessarily different. It's just the way we're able to access it now. You have the internet. You can jump. It takes 1 second to look at a website, and suddenly you're invested within 5 seconds now using cryptocurrencies. If you want to buy a stock, you have to have a broker. Sometimes it's not that easy, especially back in the day, right? This is one of the problems as we grow as a society and we get more technology. We have much more accessibility to things. And that's where sometimes people make the argument that actually government regulations are good for this very purpose. It stops scams, it helps with this and that. But it's one of those things, Rad. You said it yourself, where are these next people going to come from and what are they going to see when they get here? And that's why I think as we move forward, especially after the last the recent FTX fiasco, we need new leaders in the space. We need new people who are willing to step up and actually basically fulfill what they're saying they're going to do. We've seen so many projects that have come from nothing to billions of dollars of market cap, and then you find out the owner's been funneling marketing money to himself through 50 different wallets, and no one can prove anything, and then he's fucked off to Dubai or something stupid like that. It happens daily. You are right. There are scams, but there's also gold. There's gold to be found here,
and that's No, that's what I'm trying to highlight with this podcast, is just bring the good people in this space together to kind of share what they're doing and how they approach it. Because like when I got into crypto, and I think this is important for everybody, it's almost like you need a guide. We're sort of at the point now where it's still super fucking complicated, right? I have, like, in the last, I think 3 months, I fucked up. I sent like a small number of tokens to like a contract address and not another wallet address.
Yeah.
And I literally run a podcast on this shit. Like, I see people do it all the time. So it's important, I think, to have a landing spot, like good quality communities in the space where people can feel like, okay, they're just here to try to help me, right? They want me to understand it because they believe in it. And I think that there is that, but I think there's then also the nefarious side of things where people just, take advantage of it. And I mean, look, you said it. FTX running how 50 to $100 billion business on fucking QuickBooks? Like,
Yeah.
what is that?
It's so funny, and I've obviously I'm sure we'll get to it later, but I've been in the space for a long time now, and I've seen it all. And it really is amateur hour in a lot of these projects, and you do find that sometimes the amateur hour projects are the ones that suddenly just get adopted out overnight, and they're pumping to hundreds of millions of dollars of market cap, and then the team are thinking, oh, hang on a minute, we actually have to do something now because this was just a quote unquote shitcoin,
Well,
And
I don't know if you follow there's that Twitter account Coinfessions. I fucking love it, right?
oh yeah. That's
But like
amazing.
you see countless examples of like I'm a developer I'll use in quotation marks of this coin that like pumped and the community staring at me looking for utility. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
like hitting go on the contract was the extent of their like what they were actually going to do with the project, and they just don't know where to go with it, right? So
No. And of course, you mentioned a second ago that everyone makes mistakes in this space. I've lost thousands of dollars making stupid mistakes, or you don't know about the slippage tax, and then you buy something, you forget your slippage is on 49.9% or something stupid, and you're just losing money over it, just instantly losing money. But these things tend to only happen once or twice, and that's the big gateway. If you've gone through that and you either get phased out and you're like, I'm done with this. This has just freaked me out. I've lost money. I've done what's happening, and you leave, or you double down, you learn about it, you stick in the space, and then you start to see actually, here's what's going on. This is so in depth. We're going to jump into it, and that's when you see the innovation start, right? And that's when you see these big projects. Well, people come together and make these big projects. But getting retail people in and getting them past that first hurdle is always something that's. You have so many projects to come out and say we're going to help you with this and that. We're going to get people there, but we're talking billions of people that aren't yet in the space. We're still miles and miles away from anywhere where we want to be, right? It's going to take a long time.
well, you said it, and like I've been in the space now, I think almost 2 years, and it took me a while to get going. Once I grasped it, but I'm interested. Like I'm curious about this. Most people aren't, right? Like if you ask somebody how their email works, or we can send e-transfers or like a Venmo or something. Like ask them how that works. They don't know. They hit send. Money goes from here to there.
Yeah, right,
So
yeah.
why do I have to know what Etherscan is or how to pull a transaction or what a wallet address is? And I think that's where we are on the adoption curve until we get it to the point where I can punch in like at tiers and send you money in an instant without having to understand the back end of things. I think that's when we'll really see a lot of people flood into the space.
But you mentioned there when you can put in my name at tiers send money, even that is alien to most people. What tiers? That's not a name. Who is this? Who is that person? Rad Dad? What does that even mean? We're still in the space. We've been here a long time, but we're still using pseudonames or we're still anonymous a lot.
Yeah.
And that's all part of the game, right? And eventually some form of KYC thing is probably going to be implemented by the government. And I'm not a massive fan of all these things, but I do think you could use that to make things more streamlined and easier to adopt for the public, right? Like you said, if there was a KYC process and you can just press one button, sends from you to me, it's the same process then, right? It's just using the blockchain, just using the technology we have. But then are we still DeFi then, or are we starting to jump into centralized finance, and then it's regulations, and then we're back where we started.
But I'm of two minds of this. I think both of these things need to exist. I do think the centralized exchanges to some extent should be regulated. However, I also think platforms like PancakeSwap and Uniswap should be available for people that want to trade in that way, right? And I think we had the guys from CoinScan on last week that are trying to help, build out a platform that will enable that to be easier for people. But, I'm here for decentralization. I love the tech. I love the idea behind it. I love the fact that I don't have to rely on people to make financial decisions. And you kind of said near the beginning about having to be like an accredited investor to actually invest in a penny stock, like back in the day. Like unless you had 100K and like 2 million of liquid assets to your name, you couldn't buy into this. Meanwhile, I could throw $100 at whatever I want as a quote unquote angel investor in crypto. And I think that's what draws a lot of investors to the space. But then they also jack up the risk curve of potentially getting scammed, or at least I don't even know if it's scams half the time or if projects just fail ultimately, right? Like something goes wrong.
Street, right? Say you went to a supermarket and someone sat there. We get this where I live. There are people who they rent spaces outside of a supermarket or any sort of mainstream area where people are going to go walk by, and they advertise their new business. It's a startup. We need XYZ money to do XYZ. If I give them money, in reality, I know that. Is this business going to be a good business? Is there a market for this business? Is there this? Is there that? Am I going to see a return on this? What am I going to get back? there's all these different questions you think to yourself before you even start doing it. But ultimately, when you take that investment risk, it is a risk. It might not work. There might not be a market for it. They could be the best of the best, and it still might fail because the economy's collapsing. There's inflation through the roof. So it's the same thing in DeFi, but it's just so easy when you're in the space to just throw money at something and forget about it. That I think a lot of people use that as an excuse to make projects potentially quote unquote fail, in a certain way, and then secretly they could be doing anything to that contract behind the scenes, right? And that's one of the problems. But that's self custody, though, right? That's self ownership of your own money. You have that responsibility, and you're making these investments. It's only on yourself if it goes wrong because you have the due diligence. You have the ability to do due diligence before you press send. Same with reality.
And that's it. Like, not everybody's comfortable with that concept, right? They want somebody to take care of them. That's fine. That's what fiat currency does. You have the insurance of whatever country you happen to live in. You've got your central banks. You've got all of that stuff. But if you want an alternative, well, it exists. You just need to be willing to put in some work and actually learn what it means and how to use it, right?
It exists for now, but who knows in 5 years?
That's the thing. Like, I don't know if I'm Canadian, obviously, and they just announced that decentralized leverage trading is banned. I'm like, how the fuck are you going to enforce that? And like all the all the Canadian exchanges that can on ramp and off ramp your fiat are now KYC. You have to use 2-factor. You have to give them your documents. And like, I get it. Like, I mean, realistically, crypto is all taxable, and people may or may not find ways around that. I don't condone any of that. Pay your taxes, please. But there is some onus shifting to the exchanges themselves to actually be a bit of a gatekeeper in that regard, and it sort of takes away, like, how do you navigate the space aside from doing OTC trades or peer-to-peer transactions, which I think ultimately was the original intent of crypto to begin with, right?
To an extent, obviously Bitcoin is meant to be the people's money in a sense, right? Once it's all mined, that's it. You can't get any more. You put in proof of work, so there's actually a price to even creating it, and that's why it's competitive with gold. Proof of work is that status. So peer-to-peer transactions are basically digital money, and it's just gone from that to a crazy number times 1,000, and now everyone's sort of trying to get into the game. Everyone who can code is jumping in, and we talked about making things accommodatable and reducing the gateway to entry earlier. There are platforms you can go on. You can just say, I want to make a contract that does X, Y, Z, have this many taxes, press one button, and it automatically creates for you a contract. And then you can just release that, And these things are so dangerous and so silly. And investors who just aren't quite necessarily up to that level of scrutinizing a contract are just going to get fooled by that quite easily. And we're still at that point in DeFi right now where we just need that leap forward in some capacity to just spearhead us to a more trustworthy space, but keeping us in that decentralized sphere, I guess. And like you rightly mentioned, I do think centralized exchanges should be regulated to an extent. I mean, of course, look at FTX. Look at what Binance is going through right now. They should be held to a standard because it's still our money going into it. But a lot of people buy, like, for example, main stable coins on cryptocurrency exchanges. When you buy Bitcoin, you're supposed to take it off and hold it and wait, right? You're meant to look after it. That's self-custody. But if I go to an exchange and buy Ethereum, that's when suddenly DeFi became dangerous because now you can't really do this with Bitcoin, right? Or not really. But with Ethereum, you can whack that straight to your MetaMask wallet. Then you're in DeFi now, and you can do whatever you want. And you're making 100x here, you're making 100x there, and you're losing it all over there. The government they want to have control of that, right? Regulation needs to be there to an extent, but you don't want too much of it. You just need you need that fine balance.
No, and you brought up an interesting point, and I was listening to, I think it was Twitter Spaces a few weeks ago, and they kind of talked about this issue, but I thought it was really, I had never considered this perspective before, but, if a centralized exchange is supposed to be sort of a custodian of your money, they have a one-to-one backing of everything that you add. Yeah. Well, if I add 1 ETH worth of fiat to, I don't know, Kucoin, and then I send that to my MetaMask, I go off into DeFi world, I 100x that, I've now got 100 ETH. Why would I assume that KuCoin has 100 ETH to pay me back when I only gave them 1 to begin with, right? And this is the challenge. Like, it's really difficult to sort of maintain capitalization in levels where it needs to be, because I don't have to go back through KuCoin. I could off ramp through Binance, or I could send it to, Bybit, and then I could leverage trade that 100 into 1,000 ETH, and then I go back to like some janky Canadian exchange, and like it's really complicated, right?
It's complicated for an extent, but you have to count miners who are creating it and sending it to exchanges, and then you might have got 100 ETH, but that's somebody else's 100 ETH at some point, right? And they would have gone for an exchange. because let's be honest, when everyone first started getting into DeFi, the only way you could get that crypto was either mine it yourself, which is too technical for a lot of people, including myself, honestly.
Yeah.
And then just getting it through an exchange. So they had that backing. But if you look at, I think it was FTX that we recently discovered were actually offering paper Bitcoin. They didn't have. You used to said 1-to-1, right? They didn't have 1-to-1. They were wasting everyone's money on who knows what. You were getting paper Bitcoin. So
it's not unlike any sort of derivatives market, though. I mean, if everybody that traded paper gold stood up and said, "I'll take delivery, please," it can't happen, right? There's, exactly. I don't know what the multiple is, but it's some number of X's more paper gold that exists than real gold. It's no different. It's just, I think there's more money involved in the traditional finance system, so that if something were to happen, it could be dealt with, and then there's insurance on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. Insurance regulations, they've got it back to some capacity. You can't just do that, but clearly in crypto you could. So
right.
And this is, I think personally, I'm not going to go conspiracy theory and crazy, but I do think the whole thing was probably planned to an extent, just to make everyone lose all their money and say, look, this is why you need regulations. Here you go. If you look into the background of Sam, it's quite easy to see the ladder of how this happened. I think, in my personal opinion, it's been too deep into it, but.
It's been really interesting watching the fallout, and like even like a guy like Kevin O'Leary, testifying in front of Congress. It's like, okay, you were an investor, you took a gamble, like it didn't work out. Why are you now picking up your pitchfork but also at the same time defending a guy that basically defrauded you of millions, if not billions?
The whole thing's really just the epitome of clown world at this point, in my opinion. It's just bonkers.
I don't even think we're done. I think the details that are going to come out related to this whole Democratic, party donation thing, and it's it's fucked up.
It's messy, man. It's messy. It's going to get 100%.
Worse. But before we dive into actual sort of your audit business, I kind of just like, what's your crypto history? Like, how did you get here? It's not an easy place to be sitting right here. So how did you get here?
No, so it's one of those situations. I feel like everyone goes through some capacity of this when you're. I like to feel like, it's so hard to get into. So I used to be just a regular average Joe. I used to work 9 to 5 like most people do, right? I started working from 16 when I was in college. I skipped university, so from 18 I was just full-time work, right? I'm probably £1,200 a month, which back then, 10 years ago when you were 18 or 8 years ago in my case, that seems cool. Oh, I've got 1.2 grand. I'm living at home. I've got no expenses. £1,000 a month, my friend, is nothing. As you know, it's nothing, right? And you don't know that at the time. But I worked my way up to a manager of a retail shop. I was constantly set up to top salesman, worked my way up to management, like I say. And I just wasn't seeing a financial benefit with the responsibility that came with what I was doing as I kept climbing that ladder. And I thought, this is just messed up. Like, I'm looking at mortgage prices back then. This is before I got really into financial markets or anything. I'm thinking £300,000 for a house. Let me do the math on that. Hang on. I'm a manager of a shop. I'm making £1,000 a month. This ain't going to work for me. Somewhere down the line, it has to click in your head. And I used to see people drive past in these really, really nice cars where I used to live. And I'm like, I'm driving a bloody Corsa. What's happening here? So one day I was quite interested in Bitcoin just because I did ICT in college. So I learned all about IT in general. And I just found out about Bitcoin one day at random. I was 16. So that's 10 years ago for me. And I actually mined a bit on my laptop without knowing anything of what I was doing. I don't think I even set it up correctly. I lost that a long time ago. Who knows where that money's gone? But you don't know what you're doing, right? So I forgot all about it till I was about 20. I got a job on a cruise ship, and I did a lot of traveling back then. So I went abroad. Before I went abroad, I had about £3,000 to my name, and Bitcoin was about £3,000. So I thought, I'm going away for a year to work on ships. I'm going to whack my money in this. I'm going to hope for the best. And let me tell you, Rad, working on cruise ships is not what they make it sound like it's going to be. Terrible. Ruined my health, ruined my legs. I could barely walk. I was nearly put into a wheelchair.
Wow.
Because I was doing 14 hours a day, non-stop on my feet, and I already had issues I didn't really know about that just came out from that workload, right? So I was working on a cruise ship. I was on there for 6 months, but I had to leave after 3 because of a medical discharge. And I'm telling you, Rad, you paid, I think it was about £400 a month to do 12 to 14 hours a day with no days off for 6 months straight.
My God.
That's slave labor, let's be honest. That is slave labor. And one day, while I'm sitting in there thinking, this is horrible, what am I doing with my life? I managed to get a bit of internet, and I looked at my Coinbase, because it was Coinbase back then, and my Bitcoin, it was suddenly worth £4,000. I was thinking to myself, hang on a minute, I've made £1,000 here. I'm sat here working my ass off for £500 a month, and I've just made £1,000 overnight doing nothing. And that was, to me, the cog that turned in my head and thought, I'm being scammed. Something's not right here. I'm being scammed by society. This is not correct. There's something wrong here. So when I came back off the ships, that was it. I deep dived into crypto then, and I started looking into it. moved out to an apartment near myself, and it was quite expensive. And I also lost my job at the same time. So for me, I just started looking into DeFi, and it was make or break. I had no money. I had to make money. I had to make something of myself. So I just went balls to the wall, DeFi Central, jumped into some early projects back then that luckily took off and went really well for me. And I just never looked back. That was 3 years ago now. 3 or 4? No, hang on. Would have been 4 years ago now. So 4 years of just non-stop grinding in the space since then.
Man, what a story. It's interesting actually how similar like some of the other stories I've had. Like when I talked to Crypto Black Sheep in episode 1, he's like, I threw my last 20 grand at something and then that was the thing that changed his life, right? So
yeah.
No, that's
you need to make money, right? You got to take the risks, and you have to learn. You have to learn about things. It's too easy to be comfortable, right? Make $2,000 a month, maybe at the peak of your professional career. Sit back on a mortgage that controls you until you're 17 and retire. That's just too. I can't have that. I can't personally. I just can't digest that thought process anymore. It's a scam. I refuse.
Well, my wife and I joke all the time that we were either born 10 years too early or 10 years too late, because I'm a little bit older than you. So I am in that sort of 9 to 5, have a mortgage, you know, I've got responsibility. So the risk that I can take is lower than a guy who's, you know, disappearing onto a cruise ship for 6 months. But but it's still scary as fuck, right? You took your last money and chucked it at a market that you didn't know much about and just said, let's see what happens, right?
It's one of those crazy things, to be honest. But in hindsight, I think what happened to me was when I came back off the ships, I was working in the call center before I went to DeFi, and I think Bitcoin went from 10K to 3. There was like a crash. It was before COVID happened, right? There was a crash. It was like a big crash of Bitcoin. Bitcoin went down to 3K again, where I got in. I'd obviously held it the entire time at this point. I'm then freaking out. This is my first crash I've experienced. Lost all the money pretty much. Made a load of money in DeFi following that. Lost all that because I'm bearish and freaked out. But to me, it was a paid lesson. I probably broke even in the end, and I gained so much information from it and knowledge. So to me, it was just a paid lesson. But I can see why another person would jump into this, get freaked out and scared, and just leave it and never come back. I really can see why you would do that.
Well, and I think that could have happened to me, because I jumped in sort of like right before the bull kind of started last year, right? And
when we met, that was probably around
exactly. I was only in a few months at that point. So like if I had exited, like if I had been scared of the volatility when I saw this like most recent crash happen, I should be gone, right? But again, same as you take it as a lesson. You know, I probably also broke even last year, even though I spent fucking thousands of hours, you know, doing research and, you know, trying to find that next gem, right? But I think this is the moment that people should be getting into crypto, trying to understand now, make the lessons while the volatility isn't there, get yourself set up so that when the volume does return, you're pretty much set. But I'm curious. You know, you've been through a couple cycles now, but you're full-time crypto this time, which is different than you were last time. So how are you handling it? Like, how does it, you know, markets aren't what they were. You know, you still have to eat. You still have to pay your rent or your mortgage or whatever. Like, how do you deal with that?
So where are we now in the cycle? Obviously, Bitcoin went from, what was it? It touched 69K, didn't it?
69. It was like basically 69,420 because our whole world is a meme.
I was thinking that. I thought, hang on, it did actually hit 420? Because
I think it did. I think it did.
Come on, is that not proof that this is a clown world and just being controlled? I mean, come on,
fucking clown world for
sure. Can't be
sure.
easier than that, right? They're laughing at us at the top. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So obviously, I've been through, because when I got in, like I said, it was 3K, right? Oh, sorry, my camera's a bit out of focus there. But
that's all good.
It was 3K when I got in. Obviously, I made a lot of mistakes when I was learning, so I didn't have when it was 69K. I don't think I even had any Bitcoin really. What I'd been doing is I'd been very, very aware of how these cycles work and very, very aware of the volatility. And obviously, I work in a lot of different sectors within the space, so I've been very, very careful to hedge and DCA rather than like my old self, which was balls to the wall, whack all my money into this, and then not sell when it's 100x, and then cry when it's minus, like everyone does, silly. But I was obviously putting a lot of money away into stable coins and just waiting for good opportunities. And you mentioned a second ago that, you know, now is probably the best time to get in. I truly believe that if now is the best time to start DCAing in, because we could any random spot could go off again and Bitcoin's 12K, like one final plunge, and then we'll start to see a pump, right? I mean, what year are we in? 2022. The next halving, if I remember correctly, is 2024, correct?
Yeah.
So 2025 should be when Bitcoin rallies. So in theory, for the next year, for the next 3 years, 3 years, we should just see sideways, steady movement up. It shouldn't really be any craziness, but the world's going crazy. So the way I handled it was I was just way more careful with my money, way more responsibility on my shoulders, so I couldn't go wasting cash here and there and everywhere. Been whacking a lot of money into stables and just making very careful long-term investments now. Sure, have some crazy 1000x gem appears and it looks really bullish and everyone's crazy about it, maybe I'll whack a few $100 into it and hope for the best, right? But in general, I'm a lot more cautious. But like you said, this is probably my second time going through this big cycle of up and down, really, and I don't feel emotionally attached. That's once you don't feel emotionally attached, you're completely free. The second you're tied to emotions with this market, you will get fucked. So once you've gone through it and you've felt with emotion, it's left your body. You're a free bird, and you can make things work for yourself with a clear mind. So I'd say I'm in a pretty good position. I don't think I've over leveraged in any particular place. Obviously, everything's down. I'm down, but I'm bullish long term, and the things I've invested in are long term projects, and obviously Bitcoin. So I'm long term bullish, and I'm quite confident. So for me, I'm pretty good. I think now's a good time to DCA, and now's a good time to start learning DeFi. Absolutely.
No, that's a great call. I'm glad to hear you doing well, because I know it wasn't easy for some people who did cut the cord last year and realized that they weren't really prepared for it, right? So
Yeah.
always a
Well,
always
like
a
you said,
gamble.
I was lucky because my first crash was 10k Bitcoin to 3k. This went from 69k to where are we now? 17, 15k
$16
absolute
something, yeah.
crash. It's obviously percentage wise it works out the same, but when you're actually looking at the figures, you're getting wrecked. You were getting wrecked. So,
But I think your idea of letting go of the money is a really good one. I think if you're just coming into the space, let's say you onboard your first $500 or whatever it is, like pretend it's gone. Like that's probably the easiest way to do it. As soon as it is in crypto land, just pretend it's not your money anymore, and then learn with that. But to think that people are going to come in and never lose a dollar here is just ridiculous, right?
yeah. You'll lose a load of money on gas fees if you don't know what you're doing.
That's it.
At the height of the last run in DeFi, Ethereum gas fees were like $300 a piece, and I was happily paying them, failing transactions left and right just to get in on some random garbage that went to zero. That's how crazy things got back then,
I didn't even fuck around on ETH last year at all. I basically stayed on BSC because I couldn't afford the gas fees.
Yeah, because it was crazy, right? BSC, and this is the whole other debacle is layer 2 solutions, right? And that's why I think a lot of migrations have been moving to these layer 2 solutions. And
yeah, I'm surprisingly bullish on Polygon, which was interesting because it wasn't a coin that I loved last year, but the more I look at it, the more I realize like scalability wise, transaction speed wise, and then you look at like real world partnerships, it's probably the one that's furthest ahead in my mind. Not financial advice, obviously, but as far as blue chips go, I like it.
Oh yeah, I've been bullish on. Well, actually, I owned a lot of Matic when it was like 0.0002 or when it first came out. Something stupid. I had no idea what I was doing back then, though. So I didn't know what I'd even got. Don't have any more money now, but I am bullish on Polygon. I think the way I see things going is that Ethereum starts to see some serious regulations because it's centralized now. There's no two ways about it. It's centralized. Proof of stake is centralization. They can control Ethereum now. So they'll focus on that. It takes the government a long time to figure out what's happening, right? So give them a few years. They'll regulate DeFi and Ethereum, and you'll see a migration. Because DeFi, I don't think DeFi can die now. They'd have to do something severe to kill DeFi. The question is, where do you make your DeFi gains, and what chain are you using? I think we'll see a migration to Polygon. It's fast, it's efficient, great scalability, like you mentioned, great real-world partnerships. It works, cheap gas fees, everything's there, and there's no regulations yet. I think it'll go Ethereum, and then they'll start regulating layer 2 solutions, and then we'll have to find another chain. But they can't ever really snuff out DeFi. So
the trouble I think with anyone trying to do a non-EVM chain is that so many people are already entrenched in the ecosystem, so that unless it's portable off of an ETH, like it's really tough to migrate people over to a completely new chain, a new wallet system, having them like completely, like even the way like Solana dApps are built is not the same as, because it's using a completely different coding language. So, it's sort of like, if you remember the old Blu-ray versus HD DVD war between Sony and whoever there, Toshiba maybe or something. I don't know. It was one of the other ones.
One of them,
yeah. But anyway, it's similar technology. One may be better than the other. They may be pretty equal, but in the end, it's going to be adoption that wins out, right?
Yeah, exactly. But in the end, will there be any DeFi chains that can exist? So it's like not just as a war of consumership between different phone brands. This is actually really tied to the future of the world economy, which is what makes the stakes so much higher and makes it so much more exciting. To quote a great friend of mine, who was also part of the VC, he says we're crusaders in the DeFi space. What we do now will echo throughout history in the future. And if we win and Bitcoin takes off and DeFi and people's money and no tyrannical governments, people will look back at people like you and me who fought in this DeFi war, and we will be seen as the crusaders of the time, right? Pushing it forward and fighting against tyranny, in a sense. And I love that so much. I've always thought about that since he said it. It rings true, man.
That's awesome. I think it's good to keep yourself in perspective as to actually where we are in the cycle. Because I mean, a lot of people feel we're late, like, oh, I'm too late. Bitcoin's already run
Oh
or
yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah. No,
But like,
you're still early. You're still
if
very
you
early.
look at like anyone that we know in the DeFi circle, it's sort of like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, except within two connections, you're at pretty much anybody in the space, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
not a big world right now.
No, 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 it's tiny. It'd be crazy how you could be interacting with one team like 6 months ago. Then you start talking to someone else and who knows this person, that person, suddenly working with the same guy from a year ago that you worked with before that, and he knows another guy in the same team with that. It's very, very small circles. Lots of people you don't understand. Where's all this money coming from? I've no idea. But the circles that are making everything, they're getting tighter and tighter. And I think that's a good and bad thing because we want a new wave of developers. The kids nowadays who are coding are the 18-year-olds, they're coding, and they're every single generation of coder is like a step ahead of the last. So we are in complete innovation mode. The future is either going to be a beautiful, amazing place led by these people, or it's going to be crazy and technology will control all of us. There's no two ways about it, I don't think. You know?
Yeah, man, the kids are lucky because the opportunities that are going to exist for them in this space is just unimaginable. Like when I was
Yeah.
their age or younger, I was, you know, coding GeoCities websites to put up a bunch of skateboard logos because I thought it was super fucking cool.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
Or
these guys can start
HTML
running
code.
smart contracts. Like it's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember when I was in ICT, I hated coding. I'm not a developer myself. I hated it back then. I like it now, and I love reading through code. I've changed in my mind, but we were sat there in ICT making like a little pizza ordering app, and I'm thinking to myself, what all this work to make a little screen where you press one button and
Yeah.
this happens and that happens. Oh, you didn't want to get involved in it, right? And now you've got 15-year-olds who are developing like 50 different websites. They've got all these smart contracts open in the background. It is boggling to the brain, but it's amazing to see though.
It really is. I mean, and like I've got young kids, so like as an opportunity, why wouldn't I encourage them to learn how to code from a young age
Oh
or get
yeah,
involved in the space in some way? I mean, they
there
won't
will always be
trade.
jobs in tech.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If they can get into tech early in any capacity, any form of mainstream tech, they will always have a job. They'll always have work, especially now. But
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
worry that maybe we're going to get to a point where there's nobody else who wants to do like manual labor. Like in my country, there was a shortage of truck drivers and things like that. There needs to be balance though. We're starting to keep things balanced. Our society
Definitely.
can't function. So
But you also have to look at where the need's going to be in the future, right? So it's you know, great to do a job that's always existed, but you have to think about what are the jobs that are going to exist by the time I get into the
yeah,
workforce, or do I want to
yeah,
just
true.
create my own thing?
Yeah, it's looking like AI is taking off in a big way. So
Oh my
any tech
God.
related to
Yeah.
AI or and infrastructure is going to be big. Any form of infrastructure in the tech space, back end infrastructure, that will always be big no matter where you go because technology is designed to be innovated and consistently move forward. So if they can work as a back end engineer in infrastructure, you will always have a job. It blows my brain, but you know if you get them in early enough, they will always be okay.
And you can basically charge whatever you want because you're the one with the knowledge and the skill set to pull it off,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure, right? But you need to get that. Like, it's not easy for them, right? So if someone who knows what they're talking about is going to charge me, I know they've worked, they've put the reps in to get there. So it's one of those, right?
For sure. Now, I do want to get into veracity here, but you talked about the networking in the space, and I think that that's critical because it's probably
Mm.
been the biggest change that I've made in my, let's call it, career so far in crypto. Is I've migrated from my, you know, the core people that brought me into crypto, my Sherpas, so to speak, and I've sort of broadened out and started making way more connections in the space, which is how we ended up connected in the
Yeah,
first place.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
think having those connections enables you to sort of tap people to do the things that we need to do because you know who can be trusted and sort of who can't over, you know, a period of time. So talk to me about Veracity. How did it come about? Kind of what's it all about, and what are you trying to do?
So Veracity Security was well, it's an auditing company. It's a brand new auditing company in the space. But what made me want to make it one day is that I've worked on a lot of projects in my time, primarily in consultancy and just like design, these sorts of different things. Primarily consultancy though, and to a degree marketing. But what I would find routinely, and it's happened so many times, there's so many new projects, is you'll get really eager people, which is brilliant, and I'll jump into it and they'll make something really cool. Have a great idea, sounds amazing. Yeah, okay, I'll help you. Here's my advice. Yada yada yada. Get a good audit. That is the one thing I can never ever say to somebody was get a good audit because, and the reason why is because if you look into it, the good audits, quote unquote, cost 40K onwards. They're the good ones that the community want, right? Like that's your Certic and your top dogs. And I'm not going to like name drop any auditing companies moving forward that I'm going to be discussing, but what I found when I looked into it is that a lot of them they use something called an automated scanner. It's just AI again. It just scans the code. It finds keywords that could be potentially ruggable or anything that could like make a project you could rug it, or there could be an easy exploit that drains liquidity. It just scans for these things. They have like 5 minutes of looking through it. They go, yep, that's cool. Thanks for the money. Here's a tiny report that doesn't really say anything. Goodbye. And when that contract goes to shit, which it would definitely will, there's no recourse. And that's what really made me think this is something really wrong in this space. I understand the fact that there's no recourse because it's not a guarantee. No one can ever guarantee that anything's going to be perfect in any sector of reality. And the same with my auditing company. But what we can do is have the best of the best looking at your code like it's their own code. And they can look for every single bit of that you've done manually without automated scanners. They can find where it's going wrong and they can give you advice. That's what's setting us apart from other companies right now, in my sense. So just to recap and wrap that up, I wanted my own auditing company that I had control over to an extent where I could actually advise and tell people and know that if they go to this company, there will not be anything that can harm investors. Most likely, we will do our best to make sure that this package of a contract is as safe and secure as it can be. You're not going to screw up your investors. You're not going to lose your reputation. You're not going to get hated on and chased through the streets, which does happen, obviously, and have people after you. It's going to work. And I could put my stamp of reputation on that to make my seal of approval, as it were. So I went and got a bunch of OG developers in the space that I've known for years, people I trust myself, know that they're capable individuals, got them all together. And we just started working. We just started looking through contracts and making a structure in the background. So now in the future, when I'm looking on a new contract and need an audit, I can say, you can use this company. It's my company. I'm a partner of this company, obviously. We can make it work, and I can guarantee that we will do our best. There's no bullshit. There's no automated scanners. It's the eyes of OG developers who have done what you've done many more times than you've done it. It's a human element that has just become devoid in this auditing space. There's no human element anymore. It's all nonsense. And things need a human element, a human touch to make it work.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm a big believer that the human element plays a critical role, but you need both sides of it, right? Because let's be honest, you're not a developer, right? You wouldn't be able to complete the audit the way that these people do, but these people wouldn't be able to talk to, or even willing to talk to, the people that are requesting these audits and have an honest conversation about what's going on with the contract. Because let's be real, developers can be a little weird, right? They're a weird group. It
ties into what you just said about networking, right? I've networked to get where I am now. Like I said, I jumped into DeFi crazy. For 3 years, I've been networking like crazy. That's why I'm now a co-owner of the VC. I've worked on multiple projects. I basically know it all at this point in the space. So having that middleman connection just to get the clients, pass it to the devs, be that middleman, and make sure it's done properly. It works. It does work. But saying that, my devs are very, very chatty people. Like when we do an audit, we set up a group chat. They are in that group chat. I'm not funneling messages backwards and forwards. It's very professionally handled. They give you advice. They give you one-to-one feedback, and they go through all of it. So they still do talk to the people. It's just getting the people in. And the market's not looking too good right now. So DeFi projects in general aren't specifically looking for audits, but it's all about priming ourselves for the next run and being in that place.
I think, we talked about all the possible things that go wrong in this space, all the scams and that sort of thing, but I think that that's going to be sort of the tipping point, or we're sort of in the tipping point right now about what investors are going to expect from a project developer. I don't necessarily think doxing is necessary, but I think it's going to become more and more common, as an example. I don't necessarily think audits are always necessary, but I think they're going to be expected more and more often. The challenge that I've seen in the space is even projects with multiple audits still end up with contract issues because the quality of those audits was lacking. Like, if they are just using some sort of AI bot to scan the contract, well, there's platforms that do that for free. Like, we don't need to go through the audit process. But to actually go through and detail the code, do the test net, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and go back and say, okay, listen, here's what you got to fix. I think that would bring extreme value to a lot of projects that are out there.
Well, it happens because people don't know that it's happening. They think there's still that massive element of trust in this space, which everything caught us back to trust. People think, I'm going to pay this person for a service. I trust that they know what they're doing, and they're going to give me good results, like regular retail. But in DeFi, we're just not at that stage yet. There are too many opportunities to do the bare minimal, or whack an automated scanner on, say they're doing XYZ, charge you $2,000 or more, in some cases up to 10 for these basic ones. You don't know what you're buying, and then you haven't necessarily been scammed, but you pretty much have, and then your contract fails, and they're gone, and your investors are after you. So yeah, it's all about, the goal is make everything for the next DeFi run as safe as we possibly can. because I don't want anyone I'm close to lose money. I don't want new people joining the space to get invested into some random crap and the contract fails and they lose all their money. Now they're priced out of the market, never come back. If we're going to make mass adoption work, there needs to be security, and this is what we're for.
Wow, that makes a ton of sense. I think it's important for investors to keep in mind too, though, but that just because something has an audit doesn't mean it's going to be successful. It's just one more detail as a part of the project that you should be looking at as you're doing your due diligence before you invest. Because
exactly,
we talked about the human element. The sound code and a great contract is sort of the foundation, but unless there's that layer 2 of trust with the community, active engagement, from the development team and the broader team, I don't think projects can necessarily be successful. Genius developers can't bring volume without the people aspect of it, right? So it's that partnership between the two.
We've been there. You and me have been there in the past with other projects. We know exactly what we're talking about. We know exactly what we're talking about when it comes to this, and you are spot on. And we can never guarantee it's going to work, but the extra set of eyes is what is there. And there's also the transparency. If you say, look, I'm releasing this project to all your investors, I've got 3 different audits. I've got my own developers looking at it. My own developers have coded it. Anyone who's looked at this code, I have done the best I possibly can. And you launch it. That is 10 times better than saying, I spent 2K on this random audit company I don't know about. They said it was all fine. I launched it, now it's failed. The transparency comes along with it. So
I would say 95 or higher % of investors, they just see the little icon of the auditing company on the website or wherever, and they say, okay, cool. But they don't actually read the report, right? They don't look at what the issues were.
They can't understand the report, right? That's the thing. That's another whole thing. The education side of it. A lot of people who are here right now don't know the code, and that's why we need these structures in place. But we need trusted structures that actually have provable results, and that's just the way it has to be. If DeFi, with or without audits, DeFi will always exist. But without audits, without an actual security background behind it, more and more projects will fail, and more people will get priced out, and eventually it's pointless, and it all just crashes down, right? And then the government go, well, look, this is clearly something that's not safe. We need to regulate it. So, if we're going to have responsibility of our own money and our own investments, we have to have responsibility of our own security. It cannot be both ways. We cannot ask for the government's help. We need to make our own security. It really is that simple. It is cut and dry.
For sure. And I don't blame those investors for looking at the audit icon and saying, great, but they should be able to do
that. They should be able to do that,
right? Exactly. Yeah. There should be some accountability, and there should be some reputation there. It can't just be a brand. It has to actually mean something, means that they've gone through the code and they've actually, done what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. Like I said, my devs have a one-to-one with the dev of the team and the team itself. They go through all of the code manually, but there's always, I'm not a developer, but there's always main key parts of every contract. And these key parts are always open to scrutiny, and are always the biggest parts that add exposable, parts that allow problems to happen with the code. So my devs will go through that. And whereas other potential audit companies would look at it and go, this is just about okay, my devs will go, this is just about okay, but if you did this, this, and this, it'll be 10 times better. And that's the human element, and that's what other people are lacking right now.
Well, and it's easy for if I'm a solo dev building a project and I've got a few people on the team that don't understand code, to feel like they're in a silo, but we can't contribute to that conversation with the developer because we don't actually understand what it takes to implement a simple change in the contract, or what the ramifications may even be of making that change. I was talking to a mutual friend of ours who was saying that's the challenge with innovation in DeFi in general is there are things that we know are secure because they've been battle tested over time. There are types of contracts that work well. But the moment that you innovate, you're opening up uncertainty to the world of the hackers who can be like, let's look at this code now. Is it exploitable? So that's where it becomes even more important to have a group or a panel of developers that are looking at me like, okay, this is genuinely new. Let's try and break it and see what happens.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because when I look at this sort of argument or the examples, I think to myself, when it comes to code and software, there are literally banks out there that have hundreds of billions of dollars getting hacked daily, and the hackers are getting through them. If banks have had years and years and years of battle testing, I think experts found now, and people are getting into money. Luckily, we have a lot of white hat hackers who do this and get paid for that rather than stealing everyone's money. If that can happen to banks, it's going to happen in DeFi. One solo dev in his basement, or is not going to have the same level of resources as a bank, for example, right? And that's where you are completely correct. A collective of security needs to be to some degree there. and that's what we need to make happen. And I call it back to the same point. We're responsible for our money now in DeFi. We're responsible for our own security. Simple as that.
And you said it, brother. You said it. But again, people need to be able to take responsibility for themselves. But if that's as far as we get in DeFi, I don't think we're going to get to that next wave, right? So I encourage you to keep going with this project and bring some better trust and transparency to the audit world, because a couple good players, right? A couple people that do a good job, but in that sort of startup to mid-tier of audit companies, the names that you see out there, it's hit and miss, right? You know, you never know what you're kind of going to get with those.
If you're a solo dev and you've got a few grand and you've made the contract, you can't afford to go to these top dogs and pay them 40K.
No.
So my general goal was get these high quality level devs and do the audits for these people at a lower level, a lower cost, the same quality, but at a much more accessible rate of funds to get into, right? Obviously, over time, our reputation will increase and we'll take on bigger projects and we will build a bigger team to accommodate more and more projects. But for now, really, I'm just looking for accessibility. People who have genius ideas and great innovations, but cannot even afford to get started, they need to be in the space, but they can't get anywhere. And, you know, if they're going to have that security element, I want to offer it to you. I want to get your code secure, and we're not going to charge you through the nose for it. That's the difference.
Great point, man. Great point. So is everything set up? You guys are rolling, like, good to go?
Yeah, we're rolling. The team's all there. The team's rolling. It's been in place for a while now. Like I said, when I started this, the markets were already really bad. It's only been a few months since we started this, if maybe even less. And since then, things have gotten 10 times worse. So for me, it's more a case of positioning ourselves for the next DeFi way forward, getting ourselves ready. If you were to say if we had a roadmap, for example, next on the agenda is implementing a KYC, an inbuilt in-house KYC, because I do think, like you mentioned earlier, doxing is going to become more and more, readily accessible to people, and people are going to want to do that because there are a lot of genuine people in the space. And obviously we want to accommodate for that as well, right? So also right now we're only on EVM chains, so we do want to expand that to as many chains as we can do, but that's going to take some training and it's going to take some time. So for now, we're focusing on what we know, but we're building that core and we're going to keep moving forward.
No, it kind of speaks to our point earlier about portability and scalability of the EVMs. Like, it's a completely different coding language. Like Solana's built on Rust, for example. So if your devs have no experience with Rust, it might not be enough to just teach them how to do it. You probably want to bring in some people that are native Rust developers, right? Exactly
right, and that's the goal. Yeah, the whole point is that you've got the human element of people who know what they're doing. So we need to get the people who know what they're doing. For EVM, we're completely covered. But as we move forward, there are chains popping up left and right, and some will take over others. We need to be there, and we need to be ready. We need to have those people on our side to help bring that security in. So that's the goal.
No, it's great that you guys are looking to the future and trying to be there when everybody else gets there, because I think that will give you the first mover advantage for a lot of these sort of, peripheral chains that are popping up here and there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the goal. That's the plan.
It's great, man. Great to hear. Great to hear. Now, I typically end these podcasts with a segment that I haven't actually named, but I'm calling it the exit pump, because I'm curious about the people behind the project. So I'm curious, what do you do for fun? Like, you probably spend a shit ton of your time on the computer and Telegram, but when you're not there, what are you doing?
Before COVID, I was massive on travel. I spent a lot of time in Japan, all over Asia. Now that COVID's gone, I'm so tied to crypto that I find fun out of crypto things. So in March, I work on a project named Cheerio. A lot of people know that. I've been there since the start with them. I was in Dubai for a convention, and I consider that my fun. Like, I love meeting new people. I absolutely love it. I love podcasts. I love Twitter Spaces. So traveling, meeting new people, getting out with their networking, that is fun to me. But outside of that, I love playing the drums. I think I sent you all the photos when I was setting up my garage with my drum kit and all that in there. So I love playing the drums. And in general, I just love hitting the fitness side of things. I'm at the gym 5 times a week. So
5 times, good for you.
Healthy body, healthy mind. You can't. What's the point making loads of money if you're going to die? Simple as that. So
thank you. I don't even need a podcast anymore, because that's literally like the whole point of this. Aside from highlighting great people, I want people to actually enjoy their life.
Oh yeah, 100%, man.
Absolutely. It's a question I've got for some builders. I've got some interviews coming up, and it boggles my mind. Like, you don't need the money. You get shit on by everybody when things go sideways. Why? Why do you do this to yourself? And I haven't got a great answer other than that they just love it, which is good enough for me, in my opinion, I guess.
You love what you love, right? That's just the way it is.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's good to hear, man. One day we'll come back and we'll talk about the carnivore diet and how it can change your life.
I remember. I was you. I think it was you who told me about it to begin with, or I asked you about it. I remember we had a conversation about that at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I am looking forward to that. I did try it for about 5 minutes, and I thought, hang on, I have not prepared for this. I'm starving, and I've only got a few nuts in my cupboard. I'm not doing this.
Well, Sean Baker, if you're listening to this, I would love to have you on the show and talk crypto and carnivore, because I think it's people don't understand the mental clarity that comes with eating, great high quality animal products.
I would tune into that podcast and then watch. I absolutely would. So make that happen.
We've just lost half our audience, but I don't care. I think it's important.
Fair enough.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's put it there, man. Really, really appreciate the time today. It was great to see your face for the first time, and we'll definitely have you back because I know you've got a couple other projects that you're working with, and love to chat through those sometime.
Amazing, man. And again, I really appreciate you inviting me on, and happy to come anytime.
Oh, you're welcome back anytime, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of episode 4 of the RadDAO podcast. So cool to find like-minded people in this space that know where we are in the cycle now, but more importantly, what we're going to have to do differently if we really want to bring on that next leg of adoption in the crypto sphere. So thank you, Sam, for your conversation today. You're welcome back anytime. Just hit me up, my friend. If you like the show or any of my previous episodes, please like and subscribe to the YouTube video, leave me a preferably 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, and of course, share it with all your friends. That helps build the audience, helps get the message out, and helps enable me to bring you more content. If you want to throw me a few shekels, there is a donation wallet. It's a MetaMask address, so it takes all the major cryptocurrencies that you are familiar with. Not required, but greatly appreciated if you can toss me a few bucks. It just helps keep these fancy lights rolling and helps keep the content flowing. So thank you if you choose to do that. With that, I ask that you please at some point this weekend shut down your laptop and, as always, go outside. That's it, friends. Cheers. The RadDAO podcast is produced for entertainment and education purposes only. I know this because I'm not a licensed financial advisor. If you're thinking of investing in any of the tokens talked about during this episode, then I implore you to please do your own due diligence and, if necessary, consult with a licensed financial advisor.